This is the Commonwealth, where we feature leaders of disruptive change. We released our first episode last September and are revisiting some of our favorite conversations from the Commonwealth's first year. Today, we are re-airing our episode with Barnaby Barford. Last November, I went to London with a group of friends. We were all traveling to see one of our best friends who was studying at the London School of Economics. After a few nights of partying, I planned to stay a few extra days to conduct some interviews that would take the Commonwealth international. I knew I wanted to interview an artist while in town, so I Googled best artists living, and an article by GQ magazine popped up. In the story, I found a ceramic sculptor who was described as the Picasso of our generation. I found his Instagram, and after a well-crafted direct message, he agreed to the interview. We scheduled the conversation in his studio, which was located in a warehouse district in northern London. When I got to the address, the outside did not look like an art studio. However, I held my hand steady and knocked on the door. Barnaby answered and welcomed me in, while joking that he only gives interviews to people that can find the place. Before we sat down, I met his assistants and Barnaby gave me a tour of his space. I wanted to respect his craft and didn't take any pictures of the unfinished work. However, if you search Barnaby Barford on Facebook or Instagram, he's posted pictures of the projects that I saw as unfinished on my tour. We sat down on top of his art supplies and had the following conversation. Barnaby, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks very much for making the effort to come up.
Yeah. So if you hear any background noise, we are in Barnaby's studio in very North London. That is in a warehouse district. So there's some forklifts and stuff driving just outside. So thanks for having me come to your studio and giving me the whole tour. It was fascinating to look at your work. So normally in my intro, I include how the person is disrupting or changing our world. But as I was researching you, I thought I would have that be the first question. So what do you think, or what do you hope your work changes about the world?
Listen, I make work that asks questions about us and our society and our place within society and my place within society. Mm-hmm. I ask questions about who we are and have we always been like this? What makes now different to, say, 1,000 years ago or 100 years ago or 500 years ago? And so primarily I'm making work to work things out, to ask questions. But you also hope that, when you show work, when you speak to people, when people engage with your work, that you can change, not necessarily change people's minds, but you can affect how they look at the world around us. So take with sort of two sort of bodies of work or two ways of working over recent years is I did a massive project at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London.
What was the project?
The project was the Tower of Babel, and it was a 6-meter tower made from 3,000 bone china London shops. And so basically I travelled all around London and by bicycle, and photographed thousands of shop fronts and then made them into bone china, which is a type of ceramics. Mm-hmm. And all the shops at the bottom of this tower were closed down and derelict. Then it went to the pound shops, the chicken shops, the convenience stores, the off licenses. And as you worked your way up, it went all the way to the top to the exclusive boutiques, galleries and auction houses. And each one was for sale. Each one was a unique artwork and each one was for sale. Just what happened was the shops at the bottom of the tower were relatively cheap. And then as you climb the tower, so did the prices increase until you got to the top and they were really expensive. For exactly the same object, for the same size, care, attention to detail, everything. Now, shops are one of those things that, it's the wallpaper of our streets, right? Mm-hmm. You see them every day, we don't appreciate them. And then once they're gone, they're gone. Or they've changed and they're the communities, they're the stories, they're the culture. I mean, London doesn't look like St. Paul's and Big Ben. It looks like Costcutter and, Unwin's and Marks and Spencer's. And so, from that, the amount of people that said to me, messages and stuff after me is like, you fundamentally changed the way that I walk down the street. Mm. And I think that was one of the best things that came out of that project of people saying, "God, yeah, I don't look at shops the same way. I don't walk down the street the same way." And in a way, this work that I'm doing now, which is exploring working with the apple, even from that as well, people are saying, "God, yeah, I'm not looking at the apple in the same way." And so, you make work for maybe personal reasons, and it's what you do, and it's the inspiration that you take from lots of different places to make work. It's the thing that drives you. But if you're able to open one person's eye to something new or a new way of looking at something, then that's pretty special. So I guess, how do I disrupt things? It's sort of trying to get, it's hoping that people will look again.
You mentioned the apple, and for the past 2 years, your work has been through the lens and perspective of an apple. How did you land on that specific object?
Well, I was making the exhibition, the Tower of Babel, was really exploring the fact that we'd ceased to be citizens and we're now just consumers, and asking how we'd become so complicit in that and the effects on us as society of that, which I kind of felt that, I guess, out of that, I sort of felt, gosh, it makes us anxious, doesn't it? It makes it, because we're sort of destined to be dissatisfied, because if you're satisfied, then you'd stop shopping, and our whole economic system would crumble. So after that, I made an exhibition called Me Want Now, which carried on that exploration, but it was during the Brexit debate and the Brexit referendum. And so I was looking at how this sort of anxiety-afflicted society is easily manipulated with sort of rhetoric of fear, and you've seen the same in the States.
Absolutely.
And so I'd sort of realized that I was sort of looking at happiness and, I guess, reasons for there to be a sort of perceived lack of happiness in our society, and specifically sort of looking at a sort of Anglo-American sort of field with it. And so I thought, I'm just going to stop and I'm going to research happiness. So the way that I work is I do a lot of research. I'll go through a research period, and so I'd be doing a lot of reading. I'd be going to conferences and talks and watching films and documentaries. And so I went at it from a political point of view, economic, religious, historical, economic, biological. And I came to this conclusion that we have an incessant need for more as humans. And I thought, what was the original, what was this original more? Have we always been like that? Are we different now? What makes us different? And so I started thinking about the tree from the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
As the sort of original more moment of, they supposedly had everything, or God supposedly thought they had everything, Adam and Eve, yet they were still tempted to want more, whether that was knowledge or wisdom or freedom, that's up for debate. So I decided to make the apple tree, which was a tree which sort of looks like, almost like a child's drawing of a tree, but in 3 dimensions. And it had 80 bone china apples on it, each with a different word. So for me, I was sort of looking at the apple as a symbol for more. So each apple had a different word on it, whether it was beauty, love, sex, money, profit, growth, or hatred, division, populism. And you bought an apple and you went and picked it from the tree, and the stalk snapped off. And so you sort of reenact that moment of the downfall of mankind. And that got me onto the apple, and it started me thinking about the apple. And I was just like, wow, it's Adam and Eve and the judgment of Paris and Heracles and Steve Jobs and Newton and the Beatles and Snow White and Marguerite and Cézanne. And, it's even the American frontier. Right, as settlers moved west, they had to buy land. They had to plant an orchard. So that's where sort of Johnny Appleseed comes into play. And so it's been a symbol of sin and redemption. It's been a symbol of love, of beauty, of discord, of immortality, of death. And, it's sort of, they're all the things that you know. And as soon as you start explaining that, you're like, oh, yeah, that's it. But ultimately, it's, as soon as you start putting those together, it's just like, wow, yeah. It was sort of like opening a door onto a world that you sort of knew existed. And it's, it sort of fundamentally changed how I work. It's such a rich source of inspiration and, it's a wealth of everything about it.
Mm-hmm. How has your perspective changed on humans' desire to always want more? How has your perspective on that changed as you have been fixated on the apple? What
I think I've seen is that it's not just more stuff. So when I talk to people, they kind of think, more shopping, more stuff like Black Friday, this and that, sales and shopping. I think it's more than that. I think it's, we want more of everything. So I started writing these lists and, it is more money and more profit and more growth, but it is more happiness and more time and more hair and more love and more likes and more justice and more equality. And then you've got the other side of things where, people in power and influence are driving things where they want more inequality. They want more power, they want more control, they want more chaos. Mm-hmm. And now we have a forklift truck.
Here it is.
So as I started looking at it, and this sort of understanding that we've got this insatiable need for more, I started writing these lists, and it wasn't just more stuff or more consumption. I started writing these lists, and it was, more money and more profit and more growth, but then it was sort of more likes and more fame and more happiness and more laughter and more, to the really sad end of the scale. And it's like, actually, you just need more food. Mm-hmm. More security, more healthcare. And then you sort of go to this other end of the scale where you have, those in power, which sort of almost want the opposite of, sort of more control, more chaos, more division, more hatred, because, that's ultimately what keeps them in a powerful position. So I guess what I've come to understand is, it's not you and me and your neighbours and everything. It's really a critique of the system that we live under, or that we live within. And I think that I sort of focusing on a Anglo-American area. We've lived under this a sort of kind of neoliberal political system for over 40 years, and I think we're seeing the culmination of 40 years of living under that system now. And so I think that's where we are. And I think you're seeing things with the climate and the environment, and it's just this insatiable need for more is driving everything. Yeah. And there needs to be some sort of fundamental change, really.
Yeah, and do you think that need for more, has it always existed? Like you point out examples.
I think it's absolutely. I mean, I think it's it's one of the things that I sort of try and explore in my work is how, I said it before, is how have we always been like this? And I guess we have. It's just the opportunity now is greater. The population increase over the last 40 years is it tripled or something like that? And so, and then with the speed of the internet, it's kind of created a sort of melting pot of, it seems to be heightened everything. And I guess with social media too, it's sort of created this mix which is quite toxic.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that you included the likes, and I bet that's a huge component of social media that is incredibly emotionally damaging. In your research process, as you look for inspiration, you consume films and go to conferences and ask people questions, and I'm interested to know how you land on a topic to research.
It generally comes from years. It's not just plucking something out of the air. It's it's when you actually realise, okay, it's sort of looking back on previous projects, and it's like, wow, yeah, okay. When you look back on those 3 bodies of work, what's the thing that links them all, and it's happiness or perceived lack of happiness? Then that's like, So it's an awareness of the work of what you've been doing, and an awareness of the world around you, and sort of thinking really, and looking and questioning, asking why.
Yeah, so my mom was an art teacher for school children growing up, and I showed her your work before coming here, and her comment was the diverse mediums that you work in, from ceramics and casting to canvas to sketching to painting. How have you always had the confidence to tackle diverse mediums, or is that something you developed over time?
Well, I started in working with ceramics really. And never really clay, never sort of pottery and craft stuff, but working with industrial ceramics.
Okay.
And making sculpture that way. And I guess then as I carried on, I've always drawn, and actually, for a long time I've made film as well. Okay. And it's just, each medium for me does a different thing. Sort of working with film, sort of suddenly you're working with time. And, working with drawing and large-scale drawing, it's you, the medium, the emotion, the word. With the sculptures, it's a lot of planning. It's a lot of planning and a lot of work and a lot of, and so each one really does a different sort of thing. And, and I'm comfortable trying different things.
Yeah. Just to give some people some backstory, when did you first get into art? Like, what was it something from day one?
From always. I mean, I used to just draw as a child and make Lego and make things.
Were your parents artists?
No. My mum was just had a few jobs, sort of personal assistant and secretary and stuff like that. And so we just had heaps of paper. So just used to draw all the time. And then, it was always sort of quite clear that that's the sort of route that I wanted to go down. And then I did in the UK, you do a foundation course after A-levels. So when you're 17, 18, you do a foundation course, which you try a bit of everything for a year. And then I went to university and did a sort of 3D course at University of Plymouth in Exeter. And that was just a material-based course. So you could do anything you wanted in, wood, metal, plastic, ceramic, glass. Well, not really glass, but yeah. And just as I finished, I was like, God, I just sort of felt like I got started. So I applied for the Royal College and did a master's there in ceramics and glass.
Okay, the Royal College here.
Yeah, Royal College of Art. I finished in 2002 and then just been sort of working away since.
Okay. I thought I read that you studied some in Florence.
I studied in Faenza, which is near Bologna in Italy. Okay. I did an Erasmus course, which is a fantastic thing where if you're studying at university, you can go and study at a different university across Europe with the help of the EU, and you can go for 3-6 months, a year.
Okay.
And so I did that, and it fundamentally changed my life. Yeah.
How so?
Well, I met my wife there.
Okay.
20 years ago. The links that I learned Italian, and the links that it created of not just family. Well, it's created family, I've got 2 kids, and we go back and forth all the time. But as a wider group of friends, and how work back and forth together, and sort of work with Italians, and it's exactly what that program was set up for. I mean, you think sort of, it wasn't that long ago when we were at war together, and I think ultimately that's a wonderful thing about the EU.
Yeah. So when you first started your career, what was that like? Did you work under like in an apprenticeship program?
No, I just started working on my own. Just started working and started making work and kept making work. And I think that's the sort of fundamental thing that I always try and say to younger artists or people starting out, that, for years I was really skint. I didn't have any money. But it's so important to work, to make work, to persist, to persevere, to keep going, and to make work, and without necessarily this sort of grand vision of where you're going, what you're doing, but just to keep making work. No matter what level you're at, just to carry on. And then I had an exhibition. Was in a group exhibition at Sotheby's, and then the gallery that I work with now saw that work, and then we sort of ended up talking, and I've worked with them for about 15 years.
Wow.
And so it's it's good. Mm-hmm. It's good.
Your advice is to just carry on and continue producing work. How do you balance that with the like stress and complexities of reality of like, so I guess I'll make it personal, kind of insert myself in this. Not knowing what the end is, it can be difficult and stressful to continue to focus on your work. How would you overcome that and just continue?
Well, that's sort of going back to this wanting more, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's like, actually, if you enjoy going around the world making podcasts with people that you find interesting, then that's the goal, isn't it? Mm-hmm. I think we're a lot of us are guilty all the time of was looking forward and what's next and what's more and what's, where's this leading to? Whereas actually, you're doing it, you're enjoying it, you're traveling around, you're meeting people that you find interesting, and you're making something, and that's a great thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, is it?
Are you happy?
I'm loving this conversation. And I think sharing it with other people, I hope improves their life.
Well, it doesn't even have to be that. It can be the fact that it gives you an excuse to go around and do things. Things always don't have to lead on to something and be bigger and grow. You can do something for a while and you'll learn something. And I always think that you go down, you enjoy doing something. If you enjoy doing something, you'll want to do it better, and you'll become better, and you'll persevere at it, and you'll end up being quite good at it. Mm-hmm. And that's how you end up. Then other opportunities will come, and I don't think we always need a kind of 5-year game plan or 10-year game. It's like just enjoy now.
Yeah. How much better do you think your work has gotten over the years? Or do you think it has gotten?
Oh, God, I always hate everything that I've made. What happens is you make something, while you're making it, you think it's the best thing ever. And then as soon as you've finished it, you think it's awful. And then about 5 years later, you look at it and go, bah, it's all right, actually. Mm-hmm. So how has it changed? It's changed. I'm better at making things. I'm more aware of the world around me, maybe more succinct in my thinking, but I make loads of mistakes. You have to sort of trust yourself that I'm making this without necessarily having it all worked out. Mm-hmm. If you've got everything worked out, I think it was Hitchcock said that, by the time he comes to shooting a film, he's totally bored of it, because he's done all the work. Mm-hmm. And it's the same. Sometimes you have to trust yourself to just go with it and make something. Mm-hmm. And make it, and some things come out well and some things don't. And I was talking to a friend who's a composer, and we were talking about the amount of work we make compared to the amount of work that we show. Mm-hmm. And
what is the percentage?
Oh God, I make a lot of work that I don't show and don't ever intend to show.
Why not?
Because it moves you forward. Mm-hmm. Moves you forward. I draw constantly. That I don't, I draw portraits of people. I draw loads of stuff, but I don't, ever really intend to show it because it just feeds me. It's something that I enjoy doing, and it takes me to the next. It moves you on. Mm-hmm. If you only doing things that are so important that you're going to put them in an exhibition, then it would stifle me. You know, it's much better to be free and to be making stuff, and then every now and again, you know, you go, that's it, and then you concentrate on a group of work or body of work or an exhibition, and then you go back to sort of floating around. And, well, not floating around. That's sort of, I don't think sort of justifies it, but it's, you know, I work hard, but I just make work, which I think is sort of fundamental.
Mm-hmm. I also wanted to touch on your use of social media. That we have kind of talked about the downside of it. As I research and talk to artists, and a lot of artists that have your prestige choose not to use social media at all. However, I connected with you on Instagram, and you do showcase a lot of your work on social media. So how do you approach using that tool to showcase your work?
To be honest with you, I'm not very good at it, but you know, it's important. It's an important tool. It's an important tool in today's world. Mm-hmm. But how do I use it personally is I don't put everything that I've made on it. I mean, some artists you see, I mean, if you say to somebody, oh, have you seen so-and-so's work? I say, no. Bang, straight onto Instagram. And there's a lot of people where you go down and it's a portfolio of like, this is what I do. And it's like, yeah, okay. I use it a bit more to, I guess, share some of my research as well and share a thought process. So it doesn't sort of, when you come to my work, it's not necessarily out of the blue. So say doing I've done a huge amount of research about the apple and its impact on culture and society over thousands of years, from, you know, everything from history and religion and film and music and science and agriculture and, you know, stories and, you know, you name it. So, and we're actually working on a book about that. And so I thought, you know, it's quite interesting. You know, I quite like sharing something every day from that. It makes me pick something out of the research to maybe do a little bit more research about that thing, write about it. And you think, oh God, nobody's actually looking at this stuff. And then you'll go out and you'll see people and it's like, oh, that's so interesting. Oh, that's really great. So, you know, so it's a different way of engaging. It's another way of sort of opening people's eyes to things that they might not have seen. But gosh, I mean, it's also a thing, isn't it? I mean, I don't enjoy looking at Instagram. You know, I don't think it's very good for you. I don't think it makes you very happy.
Yeah.
And so, but you know, I don't use Twitter. It's a bit wordy. I've never really, you know, from day one, I've never really sort of spent time in working out how to sort of use it or used it or engaged with it. Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's a tool to use, and I think it's a thing to engage with. I mean, you know, Facebook's in another way completely different. You know, some people say, "God, I hate Facebook. It's all this." But I mean, I use it more to engage in a different way with my local community. You know, there's a few sort of groups in my area where I live, and it's interesting. You know, you sort of it's a community of the people that live around you, and so that's what I use that more for, which is quite interesting.
Did you grow up in this area of London?
No, I grew up south of London in a place called Dorking. And I moved around a bit, but we ended up living northeast London about 13, 14 years ago.
Okay. So at the start, you mentioned how questioning in society gives you a place within it and a sense of belonging. What advice would you have to people looking to do the same?
Looking to do the same as what?
Yeah, like what questions should you start asking?
I don't know. Question everything. I mean, I've got two boys, young, and I just say, as long as you're asking why to everything, then, you know, you'll be fine. I think we take a lot of stuff at face value now, when it's actually the fundamental questions of why. You know, why is this person on the telly or on the internet? Why is this person telling us this? You know, what have they got to gain from it? And it's sort of, or why are they castigating this person for saying something when that person's got nothing to gain from saying that? Why does the government want this? Why does the opposition want this? Why is this as long as you're saying why, asking why, and trying to not stay within your bubble, then I think it's then I think you're on the right lines. Yeah. As soon as we start accepting everything at face value, then it's sort of game over.
Well, Barnaby, thanks for coming on the show with me today.
Well, thanks very much for coming up.
Yeah, appreciate it. The Commonwealth is edited by Kyle Kua, directed by Alec McChesney, and produced in partnership with KZUM Radio. Special thanks to Emmy Hernandez and Isabel Cheeseman for creative guidance. That concludes this episode. Thanks for being a member of the Commonwealth. If you enjoyed what you heard, please tap the share button and send it out to your friends and family. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please leave us a review. We occasionally have to leave out portions of an interview. Instead of deleting them forever, we upload them to our Patreon page. Go to patreon.com to check out our profile. Your subscription helps support the show. Tap subscribe to stay updated when we release new episodes.